You're listening to the Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network. Yeah, it's a mouthful. For more great shows like the one you're about to enjoy, visit electronicmediacollective.com. And now, our feature presentation.
This is Jesse, and in the future, when our Blinkatron weakens the fabric of space and time, we won't differentiate between Grawlix days or Grawlix nights because we will have killed the stars and bees.
This is Melanie, and in the future, we'll have to train our robots to detect lies that other robots have been trained to use on us to sell products.
This is Randy, and in the future, when we kill the stars, we will come back and replace the stars and the bees with tiny lying robots. Welcome to the Grawlix Podcast, episode number 98.
Wow.
I even dropped my,
Holy moly.
the mystery thing. It's just 98. Finally, we're that's, most podcasters hit 98 in like 2 years.
We took our sweet time.
We took our time.
We sure
about
did.
it.
We do.
All right, so what are we talking about this episode, guys?
We're talking about the greatest comic ever written.
And the poll list.
Speaking of taking a while to get there, it did take us a long time to get to Sandman.
Yeah, it did.
Spoilers. Poll list, Jesse. What's
Man.
this? What are you talking about? Poll list.
I set myself up. The poll list is on our website, which you can find at grawlixpodcast.com/list, or you can find it on the sidebar there. You can find it. Just go to the website. And it's got all sorts of comics on there that people have added. I don't know. Maybe we added at one point, but I don't think any of our original editions are still on there anymore.
No, I think we got through all those a while back.
Anyways, you could vote on them, and then we will read and review whatever gets the most votes. And so that's why we're reading Sandman, Volume 1, Preludes Nocturnes.
So, every month, do the votes reset to 0, or do they just stay in, forever?
They stay. The votes accumulate. So if a book doesn't get picked, we have a whole list that you can vote on, and we pick the winner every month, but the votes on the other books don't go away, because that way every vote counts, unlike certain institutions. Got to get our jabs in when we can.
Wait, we don't have an electoral college? That's weird.
No, although it might be rigged. You never know what happens between the edits. So,
that's true.
Also, otherwise, there's books that would just never get read.
Yeah.
Because if it reset every time, they wouldn't have be able to build up votes over time.
Right.
We'd read nothing but X-Men books and not Batman. Batman honestly doesn't get added that much.
Mm-hmm. We add Batman on purpose.
Yeah.
For the most part. I mean, we were just hey, we're going to read White Knight because we want to.
Yeah.
Hey, that was fun, though.
It was a good review, too, because we had a lot of differing opinions on that.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Yeah. No, that made it fun. It was good. I mean, I really wanted you to love that book, but I'm glad you did have the opinion because it made for a more lively discussion.
Well, I am just worried about this review then because everyone loves Sandman. But first, what won for next time?
Oh, good question. Hey, so the winner for next month, or whenever we actually release that episode, will be XO Manowar Volume 1 from 2012. So this wouldn't be the initial XO Manowar run. This would be when Valiant Comics kind of returned.
They did. They made a big push. I don't know if I'm assuming maybe they rebooted, but they made a big push of all the classic Valiant stuff. It's all new again.
Right.
I don't even know what this is, but by the title, I don't know if I'm gonna like it.
I'm not sure. I've never read any XO. It kind of, I'm sure this is gonna upset XO fans, and I'm probably wrong. I've never read it. It looked like a, what's the word?
Iron Man in space.
It looked like a Costco version of Iron Man. It's like the knockoff Iron Man.
I think it's more space-based than Iron Man.
Oh, okay. That sounds cool. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure I'm wrong. I knowingly spoke from a place of ignorance, and I know this, so it's fine.
Well, we'll look forward to Spaceman next time. This time, it's Dream Man.
Dream Man.
My Dream Man.
Your Dream Man.
Well, everyone's Dream Man.
Yeah, so, okay. Sandman. Written by Neil Gaiman, published by DC Comics. It was released under Vertigo, the Vertigo imprint. Originally ran for 75 issues from January 1989, which does seem late for as 80s as this feels, to 1996. We will be discussing... Oh, interesting. It didn't become a Vertigo title till 93.
Really?
Yeah.
That would explain why it has so much crossover, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I was surprised by just how many characters I recognized.
Oh, that's definitely something I want to get into. Like, it feels so weird once they, like, he's on the Justice League space station.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll be discussing, I mean, it's Sandman. If you're listening to this and you know comics, you know Sandman. There's various artists, and I don't have the list who worked specifically on this book, but as we go through it, maybe we can dive into it. This is the first 8 issues. Let's talk about it. Sandman. This is such a stupid question because I know. Had you guys ever read this before?
Yes.
Yes.
I had not, which is amazing.
It is.
Jesse, I think it was you at one point it said, like, you were surprised I hadn't read it because how much I love that time period, Alan Moore Swamp Thing. And as I was reading this, I was like, yeah, this is exactly that. It's that side of the DC magical, mystical, dark universe. And it's great.
It is great.
It's like Swamp Thing without having Swamp Thing in it. Like that was the first thing on a reread here that I was like, oh man, this has the same vibe.
It has the same vibe. It's as smartly written as any of the Alan Moore stuff, and it's got all the characters. It's got them all. They're all there. Is it Constantine is in this? Etrigan shows up, and I don't know why he's the best. I think it's because they use Etrigan. He pops up randomly in my favorite comics, but he's in this. Gaiman's version of the mystical side of the DC universe isn't that much different. But I was intrigued by, like, because I'm sure lots of other writers have hit on this, and then Alan Moore, I don't know that he expanded on it, but it felt like Alan Moore Swamp Thing stuff kind of expanded that side of things a little bit. And Gaiman, this feels like he kind of just got free reign to, like, Gaiman it up. It's like his wheelhouse, this kind of weird, mystical, kind of magical, dark fantasy stuff. So it kind of seems like he was able to really craft what he wanted. And it's awesome. Like, I love how it fills these aspects of that DC universe out. Yeah. It doesn't feel like the DC universe.
No.
It's like you were saying, Jesse. So it is a little weird when, there's a lot of recognizable DC characters in this. There's a few, Yeah. First off, I do want to mention, Melanie, you read copies of the original books, the original solo issues. I read this actual book, the Preludes and Nocturnes specifically. It's the same thing, except it has been remastered and I think recolored. And I had meant to look at the copies you read because I wanted to compare, and I didn't. I forgot. But the new version looked really good. Like I thought it looked great. It was digital. I read it digitally. But tell me about your guys' first experience, since you've read this before, your first experience reading it, your first impressions. Yeah.
Okay, my first experience, sorry to steal it, but Randy wanted me to start reading comic books, and I had complained that I didn't really want to because I don't care for superheroes very much. And so he did some research, and he said, here, read this. And I was like, okay. And then I started reading it, and I'm like, I love it. I love it. I love it. I want to read it all. And I did. And pretty soon after that, I was like, okay, now you got to give me something else and make it good. And then he gave me, what, Walking Dead? I don't know.
I think so. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's all been great. And I think the main thing that got me okay with it in the first place was that it was by Gaiman, and I have read several Gaiman books that I really like. And I was like, yeah, but that's not comic books. But he does magic with everything he touches. So, yeah.
No, yeah. When I was researching like comic books for non-superhero fans or non-comic book readers, or the first Sandman pops up all the time because I think it's Gaiman. It's, not only just his name attached to it, but like it's definitely the limited experience I have with Neil Gaiman properties. It seems like his thing.
He has a way of taking stuff and going both really, really dark and light and funny and like kind of bubbly almost. That is amazing to me. I don't know how he does it, but it works. And I get that from everything that he does really, but this specifically.
I have one more comment, and then I'm going to kick over to Jesse. No, you're right. And that's one of the things that surprised me about this is how dark it goes. This goes super dark. Like this, I feel like goes way darker than Swamp Thing.
Oh, yeah.
And Alan Moore can do some pretty twisted things. But this, I feel, goes way darker. But at the same time, you're right. Like even this, which I was a little worried because when I speak of the Neil Gaiman stuff I know, it's usually stuff based on his writings, not necessarily his actual writings. Or even like his Doctor Who episodes, like with the exception of that last one he did, good, but a little cutesy. Like there's a lot of whimsy in his stuff, and sometimes it's like, well, okay, I get it, I appreciate it, but it's a little too cute. So I kind of thought there'd be that, maybe a little of that. I feel like this has the whimsy, but it doesn't go overly cutesy. And you're right. At the same time, there's the whimsy and the humor, and horrible, horrible, dark stuff, dead babies and rape. Like, wow.
Yeah.
So, okay, Jesse, when did you read this? What did you think about it?
Well, I'm trying to think, and I think it was probably right around the same time that The Crow came out, so it wasn't like new. Like I didn't read it, brand spanking new or anything. But I had already heard of it. Like it gained a pretty quick cult following, I think. Because it's been one of those books that people have known about and raved about for decades. So
and reading it right after The Crow, man, that rocks.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Well, kind of around that time, because I mean it fit in with that kind of 90s sensibility. It's like it felt like something that you should read after The Crow.
Right.
Oh, definitely. They are. Well, when was the Crow the graphic novel written? I can't remember. We reviewed it
94,
years ago.
I believe. Yeah, years ago.
Okay.
So yeah, this would have been, I mean, not too much longer afterwards, but it maybe about 5 years is probably when I read it. 5 or 6 years after The Crow, because I didn't know about The Crow until after the movie. So
yeah,
then the movie hits, and you're like, okay, I need to read the original thing.
A different tone, and I like The Crow, but different level of quality. Still, birds of a feather. Those The Crow in this.
They probably hung out.
Pun. What? What'd you say, Melanie?
I said they probably hung out
and danced. Did cat dancing?
They got the same. They got the same hairstylist for sure.
Yeah,
it's so 80s, that hair. So because I'm a super nerd, and I was like, when I sat down to read this, I opened it up, and I'm like, I'm reading Sandman for the first time. I got to do it. And so I read most of this with a soundtrack of 80s goth rock playing. I had to. I was like, I got to. I didn't go so far as to light some candles and turn off the lights, but I had to set the tone, and it was perfect. And speaking of music, there's a lot of music referenced, but it's all like, it's not necessarily goth rock. There is some mention of some like, not like super obscure goth rock, but some 80s kind of gothy rock bands in there. I was like, oh yeah, he knows.
Yeah.
But most of the music referenced is like old classic dream related,
Yeah.
Mr. Sandman, like characters are always singing. Constantine's whole bit, he's always hearing music that has to do with the Sandman or dreams.
Yeah.
And it's actually, if you look it up online, it's super easy to find a playlist of all the songs cited in Sandman.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's all dream stuff.
Yeah.
It all kind of blends together in my memory a little bit. I remember liking it all, but I also I liked it. I really enjoyed it. And then I left it alone for years and years and years. And I know it's great, but I haven't read a bunch of the other stuff. So
you never got to the Dream Baby?
No, No, I don't know what that is.
So how did it strike you on this reread?
I really enjoyed it. And that was also the thing where I was just like really struck by how similar it is to Swamp Thing. Because I think that's when I made that comment to you, was like after the reread, where I was like, oh, dude, this is right up your alley.
It is.
I was surprised a little bit because there are things that I thought happened in the beginning that didn't happen. And there's stuff that I thought happened later that already happened. So my time frames were a little mixed up on just certain events. But of course, I still loved it.
This being my first read, a few things that I found interesting were Dream doesn't say like hardly anything for the first issue or 2 issues. Like he's captive in a glass. You don't even really, I guess you see it towards the end, a glass cube or box or circle or whatever.
Decahedron. I don't know what it is.
Some type of glass. He's imprisoned for the first long time, and you don't get like anything from him. And I feel like that's, for one, that's smart because it establishes him as like kind of this, he's definitely brooding, like I guess brooding, but it gives him a mysteriousness. And one thing while reading through, and I really like the story, like game is just good. Like it doesn't matter. At one point, I think from there, you basically shift to Constantine's perspective and you get a Constantine story, and it maintains that kind of mysteriousness of Dream and just the way that Constantine reacts. Like, I think that's smart, but Gaiman's also really good about, regardless whose perspective it's from, he's writing a good story. It's good writing. It's interesting.
It seems like he captured Alan Moore's Constantine too. It didn't feel like, the Hellblazer Constantine as much as it did the original Alan Moore.
Yeah, Hellblazer, he's a little too schmarmy sometimes.
Right.
But the original Constantine has that, but it's not overly done.
Right.
Also, he legit gets scared, and not that Constantine doesn't get scared, but there's a couple times I had to like, screenshot a panel and send it to Melanie, but he's with Dream and he's like thinking to himself, or the narration, something about, it's like a horror movie, like in horror movies where they make the terrible decision to split up, and then the next panel is he looks at Dream and he's like, we're going to stick together, right? I love that.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you actually, okay, Constantine gets scared, but you actually get a little bit of like a vulnerable Constantine, and he's not invulnerable. He often makes mistakes and gets himself into trouble. But yeah, just it gives you an idea of Dream, like
Of Dream status.
Status, like the way that Constantine behaves around him. Also, and it sets that up really well at the beginning of the Constantine bit. That then also adds to the humor of Dream having to ride around in the back of this dude's car.
Yeah.
And while, Constantine's like, can we stop over here? I got to get something to eat, blah, blah, blah. Like, just ridiculousness. That said, I was worried. My whole point was I was worried then when it shifted over to Dream, which it does. But I guess even after it does, we still like jump between characters because we got that Dr. Destiny or whatever his name is story, which is mostly from kind of his perspective. I was worried that Dream would lose some of that mystery, and I guess you learn more about him, so technically it does, but he doesn't lose the bravado or whatever when we shift to him. Even when we see him feeding pigeons, being moody because he's depressed or like whatever.
Yeah.
Like it still he doesn't lose anything as a character. He's still interesting.
He still snatches that ball right out of the air.
Yeah. Oh, you love that.
I do.
To be able to set up that character as, he's like they're like gods or whatever, basically, Eternals, and then to shift to like where he's the main character, that's who you're following, and not lose that like sense of grandeur. It's pretty good.
Yeah. I really like the way that Gaiman makes everybody kind of likable and normal. You know what I mean? Yeah, he's still like grand or whatever, but he's just such a normal type person still too.
Yeah.
And my big one is the Dr. Destiny. Is that his name? He's such a bad guy, but either like that through that whole car ride with that chick.
It makes him like cute
Yes.
and like seems innocent almost.
Yeah, and you're like, what a great guy, and then he totally just like is like, bam.
He's like, oh great, thanks. Like she offers him the coat, like here, take this coat, and he's like, oh great, thanks. And the look at the way his face is drawn.
Yeah.
So props to that artist. There's at least 2 artists that handle him in this distinctly with different styles. And I like the way the first artist handled him. So there's basically him without hair and then him with hair, because partway through they switch artists and he has like kind of hair. I like the him without hair because he draws his face so cute, even though he's like this horrible skeleton man.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's like, oh, great, thanks. And then pulls out a gun and shoots her.
Yeah.
What?
It kind of makes evil more evil when it's nice first, you know? I don't know. But I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's just like
It's
bewildering evil. It's
Yeah.
not like a malice. It's just innocent evil. He's just like, this is what I'm doing.
yeah.
Horrible things. It's
Yeah.
fine. Hey, thanks. Boom.
Likes to turn those kinds of things on their side, because like Death, when we meet her, it's funny because you would not think of Dream as being the broody one out of the two of them.
Yeah.
And he totally is. It's like, come on, you sad sack, let's go do some things together.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
AKA my
exactly.
job, which is Death.
Death, she shows up before you even know that for sure that she's Death. She shows up and she's doing cracking jokes about Mary Poppins quotes. What do you get when you overfeed a pigeon? Fat pigeons. And she's like having fun. And yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, she's as gothed out as he is, but she's a cheerful goth.
You're right.
Oh, that reminds me of another aspect I didn't know about Dream, but makes so much sense and very interesting, and also then makes me wonder why, as a reader, he appears as a very pale goth guy. But he looks different to different people depending on, like, I guess, culture and stuff. And I love that they just do that, and that's enough to explain it. And you kind of get why. It's like, well, of course, if he's not going to look like an 80s goth guy for all of eternity.
Yeah.
But, you know, he comes across somebody in hell. He comes across somebody who knew him.
It's Eve.
Eve? Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And he appears to her as like, African guy. Mm-hmm. And it just like, when it cuts to close up of his face while he's talking to her, he's an African guy. And like the story, that's it. That's all you need to know. Like, it doesn't dive into it. And then when he appears to Martian Manhunter, he's like this crazy fire demon looking thing, because that's what Sleep was to the Martians. I love that. I love that little bit. It's so smart and it makes so much sense. But also then, why do we see him as an 80s goth guy?
Because you love the Crow.
That's it. Yeah.
What's wrong with us as the comic book readers? It's interesting because this last issue with Death is also, this would be the issue that we complained about when we read Thor, the Goddess of Thunder. This is the weird offbeat, in between story arcs kind of thing. And this is that done right. Just giving us, an opportunity to breathe after this really epic, overarching arc. And and yet it doesn't, it expands the universe. It doesn't give us anything that's super vital, I guess, other than more backstory.
I was thinking that too. I was like, this could easily just be a 7-issue trade. It's a perfect arc. But you're right. Like, I like that. It feels different. But I think it's smart to throw it in there because, I don't know, that story in general is smart because you get this arc, and then after the arc, like, you go to this next thing, and it's just like, well, what do we do now? He got his adventures over. So we start this little in-between story where Sleep is sitting there like moody and brooding over the fact that his adventure's over and he doesn't know what to do. And it's like, he's like, I got all my power back. I don't know what to do. And it's like, oh, that's so funny. That'd be our concern. That'd be the writer's concern. Like, that's just straight up addressing it.
I really like also that they introduced Death because she's the whole reason for the first adventure in the first place, because they were trying to get her.
It's wise to end the book on something like this if you were, with it. It's Sandman. People know it, and if they're going to buy more Sandman, they're going to buy it. But it's a nice teaser, or whatever. It's like introduces Death, sets up more of the lore, how things work, but also like gives you more of the tone. Mm-hmm. I think this is probably has the lightest tone while still addressing death.
Yeah,
and it has. If there was one panel in this that maybe I didn't like get misty-eyed, but maybe it was like, oh, like really kind of bummed me out a little bit was when Death is going around, to people after they die. And man, I love how it's handled too, is when death finally, like, you know, she talks to whoever is deceased and like, and then the wings, there's always like, then I hear the you know, the beating of the wings, giant wings or something. And you don't actually see what happens at that point. And I thought that was cool. But she comes in for the baby, and it's a baby. So obviously the baby can't talk. But after the baby's dead, it could talk. And it's just like, well, was that all? Is that it? Was that all there was? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't have any more? And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, not. And I was like, oh, man, that bummed me right out for some reason.
Yeah.
So point is, like, even one of the most bummer moments to me, but was also in the most like upbeat, visually and character-wise upbeat, fun issues.
Yeah. And if it ended with just the arc and its end, without this at the end, then I think maybe people would be like, well, what you know?
Yeah.
What else is there? And then yeah.
Well, that's the story. And this sets up like, well, no, there's more story. So come back next time.
And this very poetic, like, return type of thing. Like, it's circular, that issue. It's a really cool issue in that, like, you've got like the sports bro that does the whole thing, and then at the end of the, like, she says that she's going to see him soon, and you think, oh, soon is relative to a being like her, but we actually see his death, spoilers, at the end of that issue, and we get to see how that plays out. I don't know. It's almost like how Dream gets his groove back, kind of thing. I don't know how hanging out with his sister Death all day helped him do it, but like at the end, he's like just throwing the seed in the air, and then the next thing he hears is the sound of wings.
Yeah.
But it's actually just pigeons.
Which is so fun. Like, that's such a fun story thing. Mm-hmm. Repeating motifs.
Yeah.
Motifs, yeah.
Yeah, so what were some of the best parts? I mean, we've kind of highlighted them along the way, but what were your absolute favorite parts?
I just think some of the aspects that I find super hardcore about it are my favorite. Like the one guy, and I do kind of feel bad for him because he didn't enslave, or not enslave.
Oh, the son?
Yes.
Okay.
He's not the one who captured him, but he didn't let him go either.
Yeah.
But the waking nightmare thing.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say that's the very Doctor Who thing about this. Is like, like, do not mess with Dream because holy cow.
I found it odd that he got a more severe punishment than Dr. Destiny, but I guess Dream wasn't really around for kind of the really evil stuff that Dr. Destiny did.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I already told you about that. I do like the Dr. Destiny part, the driving with the lady. That part I liked a lot. And I liked the bit with him. I liked his whole thing because I liked him at Arkham when he was escaping and when he was returning. And was it Scarecrow? Mm-hmm. Scarecrow was
Scarecrow's such a ham.
Yeah, he is.
Like, look, I'm scary.
And he's like pranking people. He's like sitting there hanging by a noose, and then he's like, I'm just practicing for tomorrow. This is, April
like,
Fool's Day or whatever.
Hey, you guys know me, right? This is my thing.
Yeah.
Oh, this will scare you.
Oh, were you scared? Were you scared?
But you're talking about the bit where he's like, all right, I'm leaving. He's like, all right, I'll see you later. You'll be back.
Yeah.
We always come back. Yeah.
And then he did. And he's like, yep, see, I told you.
It's good. Okay, I do want to get to my favorite moments because I know them because I think I had this conversation with Melanie before. But one thing I really appreciate about this, and this is part of what I liked about Swamp Thing, because it's the way Alan Moore also kind of writes a lot of the stories. We're not just following this character or this, say a superhero, and then this happens and plot happens, and then they got to go fight. That's a jab at superhero stories, but just all stories. We're not just following a character as he goes through this plot. There's a storytelling device or some type of plot device in every issue, in every section of it, to where it's not just we're following him and what happens. We are, in one issue, we're following the guy that captured him, or like a tangential character to that guy, this old guy who gives him the book, and then we're following his son. This whole like unnecessary stuff, really, but super interesting story. Mm-hmm. To get to the point of like he was imprisoned and out of commission for 70 years, and so now that sets up his adventure. He's got to go get his stuff back, and then the next story, it's not like following him to go get his stuff back. It's now we're with Constantine, and he's doing his own thing, and there's mentions to his other adventures, and then when Dream shows up, there's this whole side thing with like Constantine, like one of Constantine's ex-ladies, and that stuff's really dark.
Yeah.
Also, what happened to the dude that broke into her house and then was just like in a sex dream, and then we never see him again?
He got absorbed.
Yeah, it's so strange. Once we get to the Dr. Destiny stuff, it's not just like, well, here's his emerald. No, we're going to spend like a whole issue going over the 24 hours leading up to, basically, where he's torturing these people in a cafe.
Yeah.
And it's an hour-by-hour breakdown. It's like, it's just this totally not plot. I mean, it all ties into the plot, of course, because it's good writing, but it doesn't really have anything to do with it. It's just its own little contained story full of great ideas, interesting characters, not even the main character. And that's the end. That's how it all goes. And I find
It's
that
basically like he was jonesing. He was jonesing for power, and he's like, okay, here's all the itches I have to scratch before we ruin everything. like now I need you to entertain me. Now I need your adoration. Now I need, like he just goes through all these different things. I need you to chop your own fingers off.
One of the things that I really like about Gaiman and others that you wouldn't necessarily know, or you won't know because this is all you've read, but there are times in the future of the story when some of these little things that are just little side bits that don't really make a difference do make a difference in the future. Yeah, you're like, wait, that happened like in like the third episode. Not episode, issue, and you're bringing it up now. That's crazy, but I love that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, my first kind of clue to that was because Alan Moore's Swamp Thing does that a lot too.
Yeah.
To where, sometimes it does straight up just follow Swamp Thing and here's what's happening. But other times there's this extra premise, and that's the focus, while the main overarching plot just like is tied in somehow. And I know this is one of your least favorite parts of it, but when it goes to Cain and Abel.
Yeah.
Which Alan Moore did as well, to where suddenly, like, you go to a next issue of Swamp Thing, and we're like follow these two weird, ridiculous Cain and Abel brothers, and it's like, what does this have to do with anything? This does the exact same thing. All of a sudden, we're like, it jumps over to them, and it's like, what? And of course, then Dream shows up, it ties into it, but there's this extra plot and arc with them that bookends that issue in a really super depressing way, honestly. Like, I felt that I guess kind of hit me too. I was like, oh, just the very end of it. But yeah, that's when I was like, oh, this is okay. This is definitely next level writing. Like, this is really good. Okay. My favorite. We've already touched on it. The cafe scene was so hardcore, but it was so awesome. And there's so much weird stuff in there, weird ideas.
Oh my God. Yeah. Even like each character that's in there has got a kind of a weird kink or quirk.
And they're all fairly fleshed out characters. It gets to the point where when this issue starts and you're following this waitress who people don't really know. She's not just a waitress. She's actually a writer. But she doesn't tell people that because then they won't tell them their stories. Whatever, she's got their dreams and it goes into her. And it gets to the point where you don't even question it when it starts an issue. And we're following this waitress for like 3 pages because that's just what it becomes. It's just like, yeah, this is another one of those stories. But it goes hour by hour of him in this thing. Nobody leaves. I love when it first establishes like the big guy and his wife go to get up to leave. And they're like, how about some more whatever, and sits back down, and like they do that twice, and it just progressively gets darker and more twisted, and then in hour 12, everyone pleasured themselves or whatever, like just weird stuff,
right.
And then they're cutting each other's fingers off, and then they're pack animals, and then he's like, and then they worshipped me, and then it's so crazy, but that's one of my favorite parts. Dr. Destiny, I can't imagine whatever the original version of Dr. Destiny was anywhere near as cool as what Gaiman did with him here.
Yeah.
I guess the Constantine story, I think, too, because that's obviously, it ties it close to Swamp Thing, and it feels very swampy at that moment.
Did we get Jesse's favorites?
No, he's next.
I mean, we've basically covered them all. Yeah. I love that death issue because of the crazy circular nature of the story and how it like comes back around. It's almost poetic the way that works. Yeah, the Dr. Destiny stuff, and also, yeah, how dark Dream gets with when he doles out his like punishments kind of thing, and when he gets full power, man, he's like, okay, now I've got all of my full power. Sorry, Dr. Destiny. And he's like a giant, and he's just like so chill about it. So all things that we've already touched on, but yeah, those are my favorites.
Randy, the thing that you talked about that you really liked was the rules.
Oh, yeah, I'm so glad I forgot about this. Okay, so what this got me thinking about was, yes, he's super powerful. He has crazy kind of magical powers. He interacts with demons, and he has a contest against a demon at one point, and there's like these crazy kind of rules. But it establishes how everything works. And it does it like smoothly. It's not like just exposition dumps, but it establishes how this magic works. And like the fact that he can't just conjure anything he wants. He has to work from things that exist in people's dreams. Like at one point he needs to put some concoction together, and he's like, so I grabbed the wheat from whatever farmer from Argentina's dream, and blah blah blah, and I got this from whoever's dream, and I was able to pull this from this dream. But the black girl lamb or whatever, the black female lamb, that one was tricky. Fortunately, a little girl in wherever was dreaming about one, so he was able to pull one from there. And I'm like, first off, that's so cool. But also, it's not just like some weird nebulous powers he has. There's rules to it, and it establishes what those rules are. And it made me think of bringing on the bad guys when I was complaining about, old school Doctor Strange fighting Dormammu, where he's doing magic things, but there's no rules. There's nothing established, and none of it therefore meant anything to me. It was just like he holds his hands up, and then lights happen, and I'm supposed to understand like what his strengths and I'm sure you read more Doctor Strange, it establishes things. But based on that story alone, like one of my gripes I remember, this is years ago, listeners, you go back and listen to it. Here, the magic makes sense. There's rules, there's logic, there's, it's not, I'm sure basically has limitless power, but he has to do things to make it work. And I love that. And I loved how that was approached.
It's crazy how like when his powers are like left unchecked, like out in the mortal realm or whatever, how they get like twisted, like Dr. Destiny twists the gem, the sand dust, or the sleep dust or whatever, how that gets twisted and used incorrectly.
I guess the Dr. Destiny, the way that works was a little kind of nebulous, but at least like it explained how he was able to harness it. And it says, okay, it makes dreams reality. That makes sense. I can grasp that. But then like how it was actually working was weird. So I'm like, well, he obviously has like control over it, but he's not necessarily dreaming. So I guess that's a little nebulous, but you kind of roll with it because it's so crazy. What didn't you guys like about this?
Nothing.
Oh man. Yeah. I don't know.
You didn't like
maybe shoehorning in the DC characters, but even that was kind of fun. Like even that Neil Gaiman, like he chose the right characters to have like Martian Manhunter to see him, as the Martian version or whatever.
Who they worshipped and stuff all crazy. I didn't expect that, but
yeah, that was interesting. Like, so yeah.
Makes sense though. I mean, shapeshifter, dream thing,
There's like 2 Justice League characters that is in there, and it's Martian Manhunter, and he uses that to his advantage to establish like, he's not just an Earth thing. So that's building on the lore of Sleep. And then at least with the other guy, what's his name? Scott Free. Mr. Miracle, maybe?
Oh, yeah,
It is a little jarring, but when we start that issue, we start in his dream of trying to escape Apocalypse. First off, I thought that was handled interestingly, where he's trying to escape and then he ends up in this like weird torture thing every time. But also the art style shifts dramatically to kind of mimic that time period when that, the New Gods time period art style. I thought that was kind of fun. And also that like he was not grasping who this guy was, and he's just like, is this going to be every night? Like he's irritated that this guy shows up and wakes him up. Yeah, I don't know. So it was a little weird, but Gaiman was still able to use them to good effect.
Mm-hmm.
would you recommend this? Because I always ask. It's such a silly question.
Right, yeah.
Yes, I would recommend this. I would recommend this to everyone because it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not kids, but
Of course, this is after Swamp Thing established that DC kicked off the Comics Authority Code and was like, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised with how adult this was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We don't see any sex stuff, but there's like nudity and off-panel sex stuff, and
so maybe PG-13.
I think for a comic book, yeah, definitely PG-13. If it were like a movie presented as it is, it'd be R for sure.
You think?
Oh yeah.
I would recommend it to adults and then kids that were mature enough, I think, to handle it.
Teens, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think teens could handle this.
Yeah.
I think they'd love it. This is perfect for teens.
Right.
I would recommend it. Same.
Okay. Jesse?
Oh yeah, I guess those are the best parameters, really, because I think that comic book readers, general comic book readers or superhero fans are going to like this, and I think non-superhero fans are going to like it as well. So yeah, just basically age.
As we can attest to with Melanie, like it is a good book to recommend to non-superhero fans and maybe new comic book readers. And it's interesting because the art is, we didn't even really talk on the art. I know we're going up on time.
Because we still have a letters to read too.
You're right. But we didn't even touch on the art. This has that crazy, first off, the covers. That's what I know of Sandman, of course, are the covers because I've seen those, since the 90s, I'd seen those covers around. And it's got those weird, like, kind of photo covers that Vertigo was doing for a while. But the art inside is cool, and it has a lot of full page kind of like interesting layouts, very artistic, stylized designs in the layouts, and like the frames are just like very weird, intricate frames that aren't part of the thing. It's just art, kind of in the way that Swamp Thing was, but Swamp Thing had less of that and more like just weird, sprawling layouts.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But I feel like this is still accessible to a new reader because I never had any trouble knowing where my eyes were supposed to go next from like following word balloons. And I remember even in some of the early Swamp Thing, that could be a little confusing. Like it handled it really well, and that's great artwork too. But even occasionally in Swamp Thing, I remember there being issues of like, oh, where does my eye go next?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I had that issue with this at all.
I don't remember being like, I read that out of order. I don't think I had that moment.
I never did.
No, there's even a couple times where I'm like, I'm kind of surprised I didn't read that out of order. I look back at it, I'm like, what is it that drew my eye from there to there? Because there's like this whole page of just stuff happening in 3 word balloons, and I managed to hit them in the right spots. So yeah, I don't know, it's well designed.
Yeah.
And it does change artists. Again, I'm sorry, I don't have the list of artists. Some of the art is great. Some of it's pretty good. I didn't feel like any of it was bad. Occasionally you kind of get into that where it's a stylistic thing where it's a little kind of muddy.
I can tell you the artists that are listed on the cover. We've got illustrated by Sam Keith, Mike Dringenberg, and Malcolm Jones III.
There's some bizarre stuff. The artists, this I would think would be a good book for most artists because there's a lot of, first off, there's a lot of like reading in the text. Gaiman establishes some weird concepts, and I don't know how much like in the like script that they get, how much he goes into it. Some writers like write full out like prose to explaining it, and some just let it go to the artists. But there's some weird concepts in here where I'm like, there's a couple times where I stopped and was like, I bet this is one of those moments, and the artist handled it well. It's very interesting, but I'm like looking at what's happening, looking at like thinking about the scenario that Gaiman come up with. I'm like, I wonder if there's ever times where the artist is like, what? How?
Right.
So, okay. So like, for example, they're having this battle where he's battling this demon in this contest to where like, basically they think a thing and it becomes reality. And that's how like, one's like, I'm a wolf. And then he's like, well, I'm a hunter on a horse. And the other one's like, well, I'm a bee that stung that horse and threw the hunter off and broke his leg. And, they one up each other.
The whole thing with hell and the contest. Yeah.
And then it gets to the point where he's like, the planet eating, expanding sun. And I'm the universe. And do you think the writer was like, oh, I'm anti-life.
Can't wait to draw this. Thanks. Thanks,
what?
Neil.
But some of the design, specifically hell, like Beelzebub, and also I like the idea that it's not Lucifer, Beelzebub, and whatever, all the same thing. They're different entities that
Right.
are now sharing rule of
What's
hell.
a triumvirate?
But like Beelzebub and the other thing, what was the other thing? I can't remember. The way they're depicted.
Beelzebub's like a giant bug, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing is like a thing of eyes with like, they're so weird. It's so weird designs.
Well, even Morpheus, even Dream, he's got like that weird helmet that's almost like
Yeah.
Cthulhu-esque, you know?
Yeah. It doesn't even match his outfit.
No.
No.
And I don't understand what its purpose could be.
It's his helmet.
Yeah, it's not really
I don't
spelled
know.
out, is it?
But it's where he put some of his power in it. The sand, the bag of sand, I get. The emerald, the way it's used, you kind of get. The helm, I don't understand.
Yeah.
But it looks cool. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's like a crazy combination of, like a Cthulhu-inspired Jules Verne deep sea diving
Gas mask.
mixed with a little element of those creepy plague doctor
Yeah.
bird face
Yeah.
masks.
Yep.
It's bizarre. I love this book.
Yeah, I
It
know.
was hard not to read more. I have, you've read it all, so I've got it all. It was hard not to continue, but I was like, nah, I'll wait. And it's a little wordy, but man, it's so good.
But
though.
it doesn't. It's not. I mean, it is wordy, but it's not.
It doesn't feel long.
Yeah.
That was a thing I was worried about, like going into this, because I've read a lot of Gaiman prose stuff, and he can really get into the weeds, and I was worried about that with the comics stuff, but it never felt like that. It never felt like he was just describing the world kind of thing.
I think I got through this in like 3 sittings, and it was never a moment of like, I never quit because I was like, okay, this is getting boring or whatever. It was always like, oh God, I've been reading this for a while. I need to go do something else,
Yeah.
So yeah, it was, and once I actually got into it, I kept wanting to come back to read it. So it's good.
So as we all knew, Sandman is wonderful and Gaiman is wonderful, and you should consume it all.
True.
And now, what else can we consume, Randall?
Letters.
Let's consume some letters. The letters page, listener. Is it a page? I don't think it's a page. But basically, it's just your chance of one of many, actually, but to interact with us. And we like it when you do. So you can write into us in email form at grawlixletterspage.com, right?
Letters at grawlixpodcast.com, I believe.
Letters at grawlixpodcast.com. Thank you. Or you can call in, and that's 1-800 for comics. We'll pop it in there.
Hold on. I'll
We're good at this. We know this stuff.
I don't. You guys might, but I.
Oh, I'm going to have to pull it up. It is, you can call in and leave a voicemail at our hotline, which would be area code 559-426-6427, or if you prefer, 559-4comics.
Yes. Or if you want to record something but you don't want to do it on the phone, you can always send that into the email also, a voice clip, and we will play that.
Try to keep it under 2 minutes and try to keep it clean language so that
Yeah.
Randy doesn't have to pod edit that.
That'd be nice. Or if you're just too lazy to do all that, you could get on Facebook and send us a message there, because we have a Facebook page also.
Yep, facebook.com/Grawlix podcast. Or hey, if you just join our Facebook group, it's facebook.com/groups or group, whatever it is on Facebook /Grawlix podcast. Yeah, we post stuff in there fairly often. If you want to start a discussion, I'm all for it.
We've got a lot of people that have been adding to it too lately. Jeff Geegan from Make Eternia Great Again has been sharing a lot of like He-Man style memes for us, which is kind of nice.
I don't know how long we're going to be there, but search us out on Castbox. You can talk to us live on when we do a Castbox live if we continue to do it.
Oh, good call. Yeah. Hey, so yeah, our schedule with the live shows is going to be a little bit more erratic going forward, I think. But Grawlix Nights, you may have seen us post about that if you follow us on social media. I don't know what day or time, so not great, but we let you guys know at some point, about 5 minutes before. We do a live show, and on Castbox, it's free. It's a free app. If you got a phone, download it. I think you can use it on desktop too.
You can.
Set up an account. It's free. But anyway, we do a live show. You can listen to us live. Chat us up. When we're doing it, we love interacting. We love interacting with the chat. That's like the best part. Or there's a button. You can call us.
Yep.
You can be on the show.
Be on the show with us. Yeah. All right. We do have a letter. Can you guess who it's from?
Mark Paul
No.
Gosselaar.
No, I have no
Mark
idea.
Paul Gosselaar. Who's that? That's an actor or something.
It is
isn't
an actor, yeah.
Okay.
I feel like it's a Zack Attack.
Oh, okay. No, not him. It's from Matt D.
What?
So Matt sent us a letter because he knew we were talking about Sandman. Hey, Grawlix guys and gal. So you have reviewed the Sandman comic book trade, Preludes and Nocturnes. I'm going to guess I know who added that to the list now since the way he put it.
Yeah, probably.
I have such a warm space in my heart for this book. I was a huge comic nerd in my youth, but The Sandman was one of the first books I read in college that basically said comics aren't always about capes and cowls. They can be dark, brooding, gothy, and talk about real-world themes. I was hooked. It was the gateway drug for the Vertigo imprint for the rest of my life. Which saddens me to see that DC has dropped the imprint. Yeah, they have.
Yeah, again. Yet again.
It'll be back, but that is another topic for another day. Back to 1988 with the release of Neil Gaiman's Sandman. Maybe it was 88. So Neil was given a character from the golden age of comics, the Sandman, who was a crime fighter. Really? Okay, hold on. Who was a crime fighter with a gas mask and a gun that shot knockout gas. That's probably where part of the inspiration for the helm come from then, huh? Interesting. I did not know any of this.
Neither did I.
That makes me appreciate it so much more because this seems like such a Neil Gaiman thing. However, Neil did something completely different. He told a story of a creature that was like a god, an imaginary friend, a Greek character, an anthropomorphic personification, as well as an abstract thought. The Sandman was really out there, and he was one of many characters known as the Endless. The Endless, that's what they were.
Yeah.
I said Eternals, which I knew wasn't right.
It's
but
close.
I was hooked by Neil's story and forever pulled into this world of stories and tales of fantastic nature and little quiet moments developed. Of fantastic nature or little quiet moments, we'll say of character development. We'll say that.
Okay.
However, if you enjoyed this as much as I do, go check out Neil's other works. Something it feels like
Reading Rainbow. Like dark, gothy Reading Rainbow.
Yeah. However, if you enjoyed this as much as I do, go check out Neil's other works in both prose and comics. In particular, check out Neverwhere, which is something people have
Yeah.
tried to...
It's good. It's good.
It is good.
There's several different adaptations. Like I believe there's like a BBC TV adaptation, and there's a really good audio drama.
Audio drama?
Oh yeah, and it's got McAvoy. It's got Benedict Cumberbatch. It's got some great people.
Yeah, I agree. Neverwhere is good. I like Good Omens also, which they just made into a thing.
Looking forward to hearing your opinions on Sandman Volume 1, Preludes and Nocturnes. Please proceed to provide us with the perfectly palatable podcasting productions. Your fan and friend, Matt Spunky D.
Oh,
I like-
Spunky. He brought the Spunky back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked the alliteration in that last thing. Mm-hmm. And I also like that I was able to just spit it out and not get tongue-tied on it. Matt, are you trying to tie me up?
He didn't. You got through all those P's, but you couldn't say tied.
Neither could you. One last, I know, yes, we are going over.
We already went over.
One last thing I do want to ask, though. Sandman Netflix series.
Ooh.
It's been rumored. Do you think this could work?
No.
I'm both excited and so worried.
It's one of those things where part of the appeal of this, because it's where, like, for example, it's where Preacher kind of gets it right. It's not identical to the comic, but they understand that the part of what makes the comic unique is its kind of wild tone and weird ideas. And even though they're doing some
Boundary
different
pushing, yeah.
Yeah, even though they're doing different ideas, they get it. And so there's like, well, let's make a wild show. But I just worry somebody's just going to look at the plot of this, be like, okay, how can we do the plot? Hit a couple of the key moments and really kind of miss what makes this great. Mm-hmm. They're not going to start an episode where we follow a waitress for 20 minutes.
They might.
But is he involved? Because he was involved in Good Omens, and that turned out really well.
I would assume so, but with it being a DC property, who knows how much
Right.
is involved? Like,
If they're smart, they would involve him because he's been part of a lot of TV shows without his books, being involved. So
Yeah,
obviously,
Doctor Who did it both right and wrong. Nightmare in Silver was not good, but what was it? The one where the TARDIS is
a woman
turned human. Yeah, that one's
Yeah.
great. I love that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nightmare in Silver. How do you get that wrong? And yet
because they
kinda
chopped
messed
a bunch of it
up.
off.
Yeah. No, yeah. It became I don't know if it was, I don't know why they would have needed to change it, but interference or reshoots or rewrites.
I thought it was that they chopped chunks of it off and it
Yeah, I
changed
think
the
it
story.
was probably supposed to be a two-parter, and they crammed it into one.
Yeah.
He's a great writer, but like he's not beyond his work getting jacked around by production issues. Okay. Well, hey, this month, it's October. So exciting. I love it. It's my favorite month.
Me too.
If I had more time and I guess attention to things, I'd have all kinds of horror videos up on YouTube. But Jesse just did a Funky on a Saturday video on YouTube.
Woo, funky on a Saturday.
I did.
Bringing back that. That's awesome.
We'll see how far that goes.
I do have, so slowly, a little bit, I've been working on writing a couple of like horror list videos because that one we did years ago did so well, and like I like it, but
Yeah.
it just takes time.
I'm going to do a horror list video.
Oh, good. I'll recruit you. I need your help. So hopefully we'll have more video content. I don't know about games. Like it's just a matter of time, and
Right.
the game videos are fun.
Sometimes we have a lot of time to play games, and sometimes we don't. And then it's like, oh, now I need to play because I need to put a thing out. That's not as fun. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
the video's not as fun. Real fast because they're tangential to the Grawlix podcast, but I think they're worth mentioning. You have been involved in launching the Vicious Circle podcast for the Electronic Media Collective.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned this. Yeah. So Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network I founded. We're on it. We're the first show on it.
Right?
We're making a push, bringing on more exclusive shows. For example, Movie Guys podcast just joined at the time of this recording last week, just joined as an exclusive. And Vicious Circle, new show, launched on our network. It's not it's timed exclusive, so you'll hear it first on electronicmediacollective.com. But this is a podcast by Sid Udi, who is a old school pro wrestling legend, Psycho Sid, Sid Justice, Sid Vicious, Lord Humongous, like so many different names, because that's how wrestlers do.
Yep. Especially when they jump from promotion to promotion.
And you'll hear all about that because it's I find it, so it's a wrestling show, right? And I'm not a wrestling fan, but it's not really a wrestling show. It's a podcast about Sid, about his life, which obviously is going to be interesting to wrestlers or wrestling fans because it's got to do with wrestling. But he also talks about other stuff, and he's such a character. Like, so it's a pretty cool show. It seems pretty unique, and they're just. I think today, at the time of recording, the 5th episode dropped. So
fun!
Go check that out.
The only other thing was that I was recently on hand for OMUG Comics. As time of recording, this would have been like last weekend or something. They released their comic book, which is, so get ready for this because we don't Grawlix titles. Lenny Vernon, Badass Trucker. They release it. It's a local comic book publisher out of Omaha, Nebraska. And OMUG stands for Omaha Underground Comics. And they released a short film based on their comic, and they released it at the Waiting Room in Benson, Omaha area. And it was pretty fun. Tank Zombie Studios, we were there. We had a little booth, and it was just kind of cool. It was like a mini rock concert, a mini movie premiere, and the bar was serving up like signature cocktails just for the event, and it was a good time. It was fun. Just wanted to mention that happened. If you're interested in that, you can look for OMUG Comics they're on all sorts of things, but they're also on YouTube, and that's where you can see the short film. So look for OMUG Comics YouTube channel if you'd like to find out more about Lenny Vernon.
All right, and then I have one other thing. Movie fans, Grawlix Cinematic Universe, Season 4, the horror season, or hashtag for her, but I'm not going to push that hard.
It looks better. It looks better if you like write it out. Like it'll look better as a hashtag than it will as a thing you say.
Exactly. So yeah, season 4 is launching this month, which is perfect because it's October. So next week, GCU episode, we will be discussing Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, and The Guest. The Guest is an interesting movie. It's more of like a thriller that goes slightly horror, but it's a good pairing with Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, which is a movie I've really wanted to talk about for a long time. And that's obviously going to be our first Halloween special. And then the following GCU episode, Jesse will be joining us for.
Yeah, oh hey.
And
come out and play.
Exactly. We'll be talking about The Warriors and Murder Party. The Warriors, obviously not, well, a horror movie or a Halloween movie, but it ties very nicely into Murder Party, which is a Halloween movie. So that's what's coming up this month.
This is Jesse, and Grawlix gave me this. 5th birthday. He said, childhood's over the moment you know you're gonna die.
This is Melanie, and you are all very stupid people, and you don't understand Grawlix.
This has been Randy. They ruled for 80 years, but no man can live forever, except he who possesses the heart of a star. And Yavin had given hers to Grawlix completely. Thank you for listening to the Grawlix Podcast. The Grawlix Podcast is a production of the Electronic Media Collective and Vorpal Arrow Studios. For more Grawlix Podcast, visit grawlixpodcast.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/grawlixpodcast, or follow us on Twitter at grawlixpodcast. We're also everywhere. All the time. All at once. Why are the pronunciation things always computer voices? Because computers always get that right. Yivin?
Here, I will show you how to pronounce it. Okay. Given.
Computer.
Computer, yes. I'm glad you picked up on that.